Hey there, everybody. You've got Stephanie and Ashley here. We are so excited to answer our journal prompt question from week 2 of Intro to Piano 1. Stephanie, what's the question?
Hello, everyone. The question of the week and a journal prompt that you may or may not have received already is: what does mindfulness mean to you? Do you think mindfulness and music are related? How so or how not? And is it possible to practice mindfulness during practice, sharing music, and listening to music? So let's just start with that first part, Ashley. What does mindfulness mean to you?
Awesome. Yeah, I love that that was like our journal prompt for this week is actually like 12 questions. um, so mindfulness to me is a sense of awareness. And I was listening to someone talk about mindfulness a few days ago, and they simplified it way down and it really resonated with me, which mindfulness is just paying attention. Like just being in the present moment and paying attention. And I think that thinking of it that way is can kind of bring it back down to earth and make it realistic. So I've been thinking about that the last couple of days of just like mindfulness to me. I love mindfulness. I think it's so applicable to music and it's a really important part of my daily practice. And I've found that when I practice mindfulness, I'm a more calm person, which I really like. But I do think that even when I say the word mindfulness, it feels a little bit like up in the sky to me, like not tangible. Like I'm not sure exactly what I'm referring to. And I think that's common with mindfulness. I think it's easy to throw the word around because it's kind of like a hot word right now. And everybody has their own unique definition. So for me, mindfulness is paying attention and being in the present moment and not getting caught on the tangents of like, oh my gosh, this is what I'm making for dinner, or this is what I need to do when I'm done with this thing. Just trying to stay in the little bubble of what I'm currently doing. And it's really hard. It's really, really hard, especially when technology is involved. And especially, if we're all busy people and we all have a lot going on. So what about for you? What does mindfulness mean to you, Stephanie?
Yeah, well, piggybacking off of what you were saying about how mindfulness kind of is meant to get you away from letting your mind jump to other things. I think that the practice right now is getting out of your head and into your body, or getting out of your monkey mind and getting into the present moment. So mindfulness is an interesting word because it almost means like that you're mindful of your mind and coming back to a way of like not necessarily letting your mind run the show, but being mindful that, if you're in the present moment, you can use your mind to your advantage. And I think that like if I let my mind get ahead of me, or if I'm stuck in the past or the future, I get extremely stressed out, anxious, I get in my head about things. I don't feel natural or authentic really, because I'm like kind of split minded. So I think for me, like mindfulness is finding a way to get out of the monkey mind and into the present moment, like kind of what you were saying. And this weekend at the workshop, we were talking about grounding, and grounding is just, basically naming all the things that are happening in you and around you to help when you're feeling anxious or swept away by your mind. And so something that we were suggesting, or that somebody was suggesting, was, you know what tactile sensations do you have? What are you hearing? Did you hear like the singer next door? Did you hear the car passing by? Did you hear somebody walking down the hallway? And there's that sort of like this mindfulness of happening with what's happening in the moment, I guess, and listening to things that are outside of us so that we can kind of come back and see where we're at in the present moment, mind and body and emotion and spirit, or whatever you want to call it, in addition to what's happening around us in the present moment. So it's kind of hard to talk about because it's like I don't really want to be governed by my mind. And I feel like the word mindfulness means that we're in our head, but I think mindfulness really is being aware of our mind and then finding ways to kind of have a more holistic experience in our bodies and in like the world around us. I don't know
Yeah.
if that makes sense, but I just, it's something that I was kind of thinking about when I was thinking of mindfulness, and I was like, I spend so much time trying to get out of my head, and so,
Yeah.
like, and to not get spun out, because your mind kind of can only do so much, and then you kind of have to like let it loose and not let it run the show. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, maybe that just kind of was more confusing than not, but I think that it's just a good question to be asking, like, how can I be mindful of my mind, you know, and how can I be more present and embodied and all that. So
Definitely. I like that. I like what you're saying a lot. And I think it's a really good point because it's true. I also try, like, once you start to think about trying not to think about things, of course you can't stop thinking about things. But I think if you switch the word around of like full mind, and if you're trying to focus on a specific thing like music or practice or memorizing or something like that, it makes more sense to me, because it's like, okay, it's not that we're trying to not think at all. I mean, unless you're trying to meditate, then there's like that common thing of like, oh, we're not supposed to have any thoughts, which isn't totally true. But you can have your mind full just of what you're doing, like in that moment. And I think that can be helpful too. But you're right, it's a confusing thing to talk about, and it's hard when there's so many definitions, and it's hard when everybody has their own experience with it too, because it's unique for each person. Have you ever used Headspace?
yeah, a long time ago.
Okay. I like Headspace. And I think my most impactful definitions of mindfulness are kind of like what you're talking about, actually, of being aware of all the sounds around you. I had a yoga teacher in college. It was my first experience with yoga. And my very first time ever meditating, did like an awareness of the sounds thing. And that's something that I still use all the time to help ground. Like you were saying, is just like in the moment, what can you hear? And I think that could be a really good, I might experiment with this. That could be a really good like warm up routine to practicing, or to doing anything with music, is to first tune into the sounds that you hear around you that aren't necessarily musical or like music related. I like that. And then Headspace too, it's like, it's okay to have all the thoughts. It's okay to like, it's not that we can like turn off our brains, but we can be aware of the thoughts and like let them go. I think the original guy who started Headspace uses the analogy of like the cars driving by. I like that. Like we don't have to jump in every single car. We can just kind of watch the cars go by. So
Yeah, definitely. And I think piggybacking off of that is that another word for mindfulness could be inclusive awareness, where
yeah.
you're aware of many things at once, but you highlight your focus onto what's most important. Kind of like when we drive a car, we use inclusive awareness. So I think mindfulness and inclusive awareness are kind of similar. And when we're practicing, maybe we could slowly start, I feel the keys as I play, and then I feel my breathing, and I hear the notes, and I notice my tone, and I hear the dynamics, and I feel, oh, like my back is a little tight, so I'm going to sit more balanced. And then you slowly add in more contents into your inclusive awareness, which I think is another word for mindfulness, really. And it kind of helps you focus in on, okay, I'm inclusively aware of many things. I think another word is Gestalt. It's a German word, and it's like having the contents of one consciousness all at one time, but you highlight that one thing that's most important. And you can do that. And the car analogy is a great one, right? Because if you were to just concentrate on steering the car and you weren't focusing on the gas pedal or the brake or where you're going, you would crash your car immediately. And so we use like inclusive awareness and mindfulness all the time, just by highlighting, what's most important. But we're doing all of these massively insane technical things. Driving a car is really, really hard, or like riding a bike. There's like so many times where when we're first learning, it's like you only concentrate on one thing, and then slowly it becomes part of your muscle memory, and then you can become aware of, oh, I'm like noticing the trees as I bike and all that stuff. And I think music has a direct translation with that, where it's like in the beginning when we're learning a piece, we're so hyper focused on getting the notes and getting all this stuff, and then eventually we start saying like, oh, like I can do this and it's a part of me, and now I can include other things in my inclusive awareness. So I
Yeah.
think it's just kind of a fun thing to throw around, because then all of a sudden you can include more things in your experience, which is ultimately a good thing. So I think the other part too is like, do you think mindfulness and music are related? And I think that what we've been riffing off of is absolutely. And I think for those of you that were journal prompting, it would be really, really great for you to just sit down and think about how music and mindfulness, or if mindfulness isn't a word that really resonates with you, finding another one that does, that basically represents being embodied and present in the moment and all of that. But like, how does music and mindfulness, or whatever other word you choose, how are they related? Because I think we would argue that it definitely is, in order to have a very deep
Just a little
connection.
bit.
Yeah, just a little bit, but I for the longest time, that was just not a part of my awareness. So
Same. Yeah. Same. I think it's interesting. I, in certain ways, I guess, was taught mindfulness. And I do think that like from a very early time I was taught to count out loud, which is a form of mindfulness or inclusive awareness, where you're kind of like focusing on the rhythm and you're putting that into the highest level of consciousness so that you can focus on that. But it's true. It's shocking how little I heard about it before, when it is such a huge part of music playing. I think being aware and inclusively aware during our practice is so important. If we're not actually paying attention to what we're doing during practice, so much wasted time can happen, and so many other mistakes can happen as well, whether that's like technical mistakes or wrong note mistakes, or even, like being not in alignment with your body and causing stress and causing tension and pain. I think all of that is a potential downfall of not being inclusively aware or not paying attention to what you're doing and really being like present in the moment. And then the other thing that mindfulness makes me think of is memorizing. Because I think in order to play something from memory, there's a lot of different levels of mindfulness that have to happen. Like you have to be aware of so many things all at the same time, I think in a different kind of way. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What do you think about that?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that ties into the last part of the question, which is it possible to practice mindfulness during practice sharing music and listening to music? And I think what you were saying is exactly that. Yes, it is possible, but we have to be aware of it. We have to be intentionally including these approaches into our practicing and performing, because if we don't, it's really easy to get, blinders on our head, just straight and narrow, not realizing that music is this very interconnected experience. So yes, it is possible, but I think it's only possible if we constantly check in with ourselves to ask ourselves the question, okay, what can I do to come back to the present moment? Which we have talked about, breathing, obviously. And it's not just so much like thinking about breathing, that's kind of abstract, but feeling your breathing, feeling your ribs move up and out and back down and in, or, feeling just your abdominal wall getting like expanded as you breathe. Focusing on what breathing feels like in your body can help you become more grounded, like when you're practicing or performing. Because I know for me, it's like I'm like on to the next thing mentally, like so much of the time. And if I just am like, okay, feel my breathing, then I can kind of come back to the moment and then come back to the music. So it's all interrelated. And I think that it's just been fun to talk about, because I am not an expert, because this is something I work on like constantly, but I think it's a great conversation to be having. So I'm glad that we took the time to chat about it, and I can't wait to hear what everybody else has had to say about our journal prompt. I think it's going to be really cool to hear what folks have to say about what mindfulness means to them. So
yeah, definitely. So let us know in the comments what you think about this, and if you haven't had a chance to download that free journal PDF, we'll link that in the description as well. And you can go ahead and grab that so that you can either answer these on your own time, come back to these questions as often as you'd like, and get access to the rest of the questions as well. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you all soon.
thanks.